Good evening and welcome to Worldview, the international affairs show that brings you the views and news that other networks can't or won't tell you about. I'm Alan Mendoza. Our show tonight, Iran. Are we sleepwalking into nuclear disaster? We've heard a lot this past few months about the perils of nuclear proliferation. And of course, North Korea has now joined the nuclear club, with barely a whimper of meaningful international action against it. Attention has now turned to Iran, which has been conducting suspicious nuclear activity for several years, despite repeated calls to desist from the UN, US and EU. Most disturbingly, Iran continues to ignore international ultimatums, most recently failing to meet an August deadline to stop enriching uranium. Indeed, last week, in a calculated snub to the UN Security Council, meeting in New York to discuss sanctions against it, Iran announced it had speeded up this process. The Security Council has so far failed to agree a response, with the Russians threatening to veto a resolution. Intelligence sources have indicated to me that Iran will have a nuclear weapon within, and I stress within, 3 years. So, with Iran acting with increasing impunity, and the UN seemingly paralysed by indecision, Worldview asks Iran, are we sleepwalking into nuclear disaster? Joining me tonight to discuss this issue, I have the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament Vice President, Bruce Kent, the author and commentator, Douglas Murray, and Alexandros Peterson, an analyst and young foreign policy professional. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I'd like to start with you, Bruce. How serious is the problem with Iran, do you think, at the moment?
Well, I think it's quite serious. They're doing what they're entitled to do with nuclear energy, and it may be that they want to bomb, I don't know. But it seems to me the sleepwalking is on our side, since we are not observing any of the international laws that we ought to be observing. They are simply saying, probably, they want the kind of security that we want for ourselves. And I can't see anything very peculiar about that. But disaster at the end of the road, certainly.
Right, and disaster, in your view, would be an increased nuclear proliferation and...
Absolutely, but we will never deal with that until we start taking abolition negotiations seriously ourselves.
Douglas, is that the way you see things?
Well, no, patent nonsense. I mean, Mr. Kent is once again assuming benign intentions of our enemies and castigating ourselves. The problem is not with the West. The idea of disarmament on the West's part at this point, or any movement in that direction, would be absurd. That anyone is still talking about disarmament of our nuclear capability at a time that North Korea has just made a test, and Iran is a few years with reach within a bomb, is nonsensical. It's absurd. It's a suicide note.
A suicide note. Alex, sitting in the middle of these two views, are you taking a middle stance, or do you veer towards one or the other?
Well, I do veer towards one side, but I'll make a point that perhaps is not so well known. The Bush administration has, in fact, now introduced a plan to change the nuclear complex of the United States. They're going to reduce the amount of nuclear weapons that they have from the current 6,000, reduce them by 3,500, and are going to have only 2,000 in the next 10 years. So there you go. We are meeting our obligations. It's Iran, an extremely dangerous country with a regime that is bent on, has said rhetorically they want to destroy other countries. I think this is the issue, not so much us, responsible countries that are, in fact, meeting obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
But Bruce, do you think...
Not at all meeting our obligations, in my opinion. The International Court of Justice in July of 1996 said there was an obligation on the nuclear powers to start negotiations on nuclear abolition and bring them to a successful conclusion. There are no negotiations anywhere. So that is the obligation. It's not Bruce Kent suggesting it. It's the international highest tribunal in the world is saying that.
But if the US is actually engaged in reducing... Is that not a step in the right direction?
Numbers are not part of the game. Quality is what matters. We reduce numbers in this country massively, but actually we increase the capability with Trident, 6,000-mile range, high degree of accuracy. It's the quality of the nuclear weapons that actually matter, and the implication that your security depends on having some of them. And if that message goes around the world, then the North Koreas and the Irans will follow suit.
So it would be a good idea at this point in history for Britain to disarm its nuclear capability just as North Korea has its and Iran has its. Is that going to make a difference? Is there any evidence you have that North Korea or Iran have ever followed our wishes on these things, have ever listened to our international obligations, or are likely to start doing so now?
It's a very good idea if we sat round a table and began the process of negotiating, inviting North Korea and Iran to come along. Why not?
Well, I think we've been doing that. The six-party talks have been going on with North Korea for a decade, if not more.
They're all pointed at North Korea.
The only thing that the six-party talks, sitting around a table with these sorts of countries, has produced is North Korea testing a nuclear weapon.
Exactly. 1993, North Korea withdrew from the treaty. Has any leverage happened in that time? Can anyone honestly say that the treatment we're now going towards Iran is anything other than indicative of what we've just seen with North Korea? That a regime like that can withdraw from all international obligations, and people like you sit around asking us to obey treaties which our enemies will never obey. And what's more, you've given benign trust that perhaps Iran isn't trying to develop a bomb.
Why is Iran in the dock? Why isn't India, Pakistan and Israel in the dock? They've all done
Why
this
would
thing
Israel
before.
be in the dock?
Why wouldn't it? It's got 200 at least nuclear warheads. It's not signed the NPT.
Well, I think the major difference is that Iran has said, Ahmadinejad has said he wants to extinguish Israel. He said he wants to wipe it off the map. In fact, he said on Al-Quds Day, October 20th, only a few days ago, that Israel has no right to exist and that it soon will not.
Or we might have Mr. Khatami's Al-Quds Day speech.
2 to 1, I suppose.
We might have Mr. Khatami, the so-called moderates, a response in Al-Quds in 2003, saying that they only need one bomb, because they only need one bomb to kill every Israeli, and they'll have to have lots of bombs to get rid of all of them.
For 1 second, let's just look. Do we firstly believe that Iran is dedicated to building a nuclear weapon? I mean, Bruce, do you think that...
I don't know. How can anybody know? I don't know. I know the senior Ayatollah has said that it would be against the Quran to develop a nuclear bomb. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's
There's not much in the Quran about the nuclear bomb.
Why don't we listen to each other seriously and not just insult each other?
Well, let's listen to the Iranian leadership, which has consistently over recent years said what it wants to do. But this isn't just a one-off statement. It's not just one speech of Mr. Ahmadinejad or Mr. Rafsanjani or Mr. Khatami. This is consistent speeches. We don't have to guess what they want to do. They've told us. One thing you must admit you have to do if you have an enemy, if you have somebody who is talking about wiping you out, one thing you should do is believe them.
Wiping out is not the word. It's actually dismantling the state of Israel, which at the moment is in a very difficult position with the position it's in, and I actually can't see how a two-state solution can any longer work with the settlements. But Israel is out of line with international opinion and law on nuclear weapons.
I mean, how would you answer, actually, I mean, Bruce has made a point, obviously, that why is Iran in the dock, as opposed to, say, India and Pakistan, both of whom have, of course, threatened each other at various points with military actions. I mean, what's your view on that?
Well, I mean, the escalation between Pakistan and India is very regrettable. I don't think anyone, looking back, wishes that, that India and Pakistan couldn't have got, could have been prevented from getting the bomb. As it is, we are where we are with them, and with no likelihood that we're going to be able to persuade either side to dismantle their nuclear capability, which they regard as being important for their strategic interests. But one of the things we don't see in either Pakistan or India is a desire expressed by the leadership of those countries to wipe out an entire state, unprovoked, because of an historical hatred. We don't see that from either of those states. We don't see it from any state at the moment other than Iran.
I think there's also another fundamental difference in that South Asia, Pakistan and India, is a fairly contained geopolitically in terms of the strategic realities there. Iran is not in a self-contained area, aside from the Iranian regime.
So are you saying that it's a threat to the wider world?
Well, it's a threat to the Middle East, because if the Iranians head even closer towards a nuclear bomb, forget actually getting it, but move closer to it, the Gulf states, which are very close to getting a nuclear weapon, will get one themselves, which means that Egypt will get one, which means that Israel will be on high alert, and Turkey will get one as well, and non-proliferation will spread to Europe.
Surely if one nuclear weapon goes off in India, Pakistan, for example, that's going to be a disaster.
It's absolute disaster for the whole world. One nuclear bomb goes off. You have a flashpoint over Kashmir. You have allies with China on one side. You have the United States feeding India with technology, nuclear technology. I think that nuclear proliferation is inevitable unless we start sitting down and talking about the elimination of nuclear weapons worldwide. That's my position.
Well, how would you achieve that?
Inviting people to Westminster or Tehran, for that matter, sit round and start negotiating. There's a treaty on the table. It covers inspections, it covers verification, criminalization of scientists, all those things. These things take a long time, but actually you've got to start, and it's not a question of numbers, it's a question of the end of the road, which is trying to eliminate. Which means a radically different view of national sovereignty than we've had before, because we're no longer little boxes. Surely the climate change business tells us that. We're not separate from one another. We're all part of one interlocking globe.
Should we be sitting down and talking, Alex?
Well, I think we have to ask, how could we begin this sort of process? I mean, with the Iranian regime, and we're now have in fact said to the Iranians that we do want to sit and talk. We've given them incentives to sit and talk.